Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Local Film Talk. As always, I'm your host, Bob Walters. You may notice that I have a new set. Look at this thing. I built this thing last week. It's actually egg crate foam on some flats that I built. It was a project I undertook over the holiday break, and it was actually surprisingly easy to do. I'll have to do a little video for you guys to show you how I put it together, but you don't have to look at my cluttered-ass office anymore with the bright yellow walls. I'm wearing a yellow shirt. I never get to wear a yellow shirt when I do this show because it just completely blends in. So we got a nice background. I'm going to add some stuff to it, hopefully get you guys involved. But yeah, I like it. I think it's going to work out well. Maybe I'll luck out and it'll even do a little dampening on the echo here. So it's still a work in progress, but it's a start, and I think it's going to be really cool. Yeah, this is our last episode of 2015. The next time you see us, it will be 2016. So Happy New Year to all of you until next time. And for this episode, I'm talking to Dwayne Martin, a local computer animator, I guess is how you describe your job. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me, man.
So I guess the first question is, how would you describe yourself? I said computer animator for lack of a better term, but is that how you would describe what you do?
For me, I kind of just go by 3D artist.
3D artist, okay.
Yeah, kind of encompasses a lot of different avenues I could take. It's kind of like a general term.
Okay, because I guess with the education and experience that you have, it's not necessarily animated stuff. You can just do models and designs and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of different routes you can kind of take with this. And for me, like, I'm kind of interested in everything. It's kind of like a good thing and a bad thing.
You have broad horizons. You're open to a lot of stuff.
I'm pretty open. Yeah, I'm pretty open to a lot of stuff.
Cool. So I guess the place to start would be, how did you develop an interest in this, and what were some of your early influences that made you decide this one to be your career path?
So, funny story, man, I never really wanted to do 3D art at all until probably my junior year in undergrad college. So It was like really, really deep in.
Were you into computers at least at the time?
I've always been into computers my whole life, but I never considered doing anything with them. Okay. I've always kind of picked things up really quickly whenever it's tech related stuff. Growing up, I was more interested in 2D animation. So I watched a lot of anime, a lot of Saturday morning cartoons, and that's pretty much what I wanted to do. So when I went to college, that's what I first signed up for. And then I hit the drawing board and saw how much pictures are required just for 5 seconds of movement. And I don't know, like, I enjoy drawing, but I'm just not that fast. And
and that gets really repetitive, I imagine, having to draw, just for 1 second of animation, the same thing 24 times, just slightly different, and that consistently too.
Exactly. And so what's interesting is that when I was looking for colleges, my parents told me, my dad specifically, he was like, well, you're probably going to be interested in 3D animation, and you're probably going to want to do what Pixar does. And I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not interested. Pixar is cool, but I don't really want to do what Pixar does. And then here I am. I'm kind of interested in that.
Well, there's a lot of different angles to be interested in. You can either be interested in the technical end or the storytelling side, and you decide you like 3D animation or 3D design, and you find there's all sorts of different directions that can go. Mm-hmm. So where did you start going to college? Where was your undergrad work?
So for undergrad, I went to 2 different colleges, actually. I was first accepted into the Atlanta College of Art, which no longer exists anymore, unfortunately. They was open for...
That makes you a rare breed. That makes you one of the last.
It does make me one of the last, actually. They closed after 101 years. And there's a big protest downtown Atlanta. They wanted to keep them open, but basically what happened was they went bankrupt. And as a last-ditch resort, this was after my sophomore year. As a last-ditch resort, SCAD had opened up a campus in Atlanta like maybe a year and a half before that. but they had no students because there were so many different art colleges in that same area. And so they didn't have a lot of students yet. So Atlanta College of Art said, hey, we'll send you all our students that want to come if you allow them to do your program at the price they was paying over by us. And so
wow,
got that way, which was funny because SCADA was one of the colleges I applied for, but I never heard back from them. They never said
yes or no. You had the last laugh.
Exactly. They never said yes or no, but it's funny. They still worked out anyway. So
that's really cool. Are you originally from Atlanta?
I am not. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My family lived in Long Island, New York until I was 8. Then I came down to Wilson for 2 years. Then we moved to Raleigh. Then I went to Atlanta for undergrad. Then I came back, and I've been here since.
Okay. Is your family still here? My
family's still here. Okay. My parents grew up in London. Most of my family's in London, but my family culture is Jamaican. So it's a lot of stuff everywhere.
That's quite a spread.
It is quite a spread. I think I have a Chinese uncle, someone Chinese is in my family somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. I bet you get to do a lot of traveling just to see family.
Unfortunately, I've only been to London twice. That's the only place I've gone outside of the country. But I am pretty open to looking around.
I've always wanted to do more traveling, especially overseas. Never been to London. Haven't had a chance to do that yet. I've been to Italy and Greece.
Yeah.
And aside from like your standard Canada or Mexico, I haven't really been out of the country. So getting out and doing more traveling is definitely on my agenda.
Yeah. Once, I think you got the money, you can do it.
Yeah, really. So, but now you're back in Raleigh. After you left, now you didn't go straight from school in Atlanta to grad school here at NC State. No. You took some time in between. You're actually out in the world doing client work. How did that get started? How does one, once you are getting a degree in, what is the degree? Not 3D artistry, 3D design.
Just computer animation, pretty much.
Just computer animation. How do you go about? Did you just start freelancing and getting client work, or did you go to work for some kind of design firm?
So my first projects came through a good friend of mine, Charles. He has a company down in Atlanta now called Ski's Perceptions. But at the time, he was a classmate. This was at my junior year. So just got into SCAD now, kind of a new beginning. Started doing 3D animation. I had a professor who really made it just work.
Having great professors is really key to that kind of stuff.
That professor just kind of made me see what it was. It's pretty much like I'm playing with toys in a computer. And then I was just like,
nice.
Yes. But anyhow, one of my classmates in that class was Charles. And at the time, he was an architect doing 2D blueprints, but he was trying to take his blueprints to the next level. He was trying to get into making 3D renderings. So that was like his arc. That's something he was looking to explore. And so when he saw my work in that class, he had just started a side business of his own. And so he kind of nudged me and was like, hey, you want to help me out? This be good freelance work for you. It was paid. And that was kind of like the beginning of, hey, I can do this stuff and actually get paid. So that was really, that was kind of my beginning. Since then,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Since then, I tried improving clients. It's kind of hard. I had a lot of ongoing work with Charles, which was really good. That work was really great stuff. But I also done some work for free here and there, trying to get, hopefully that it will become something more. Unfortunately, it didn't. But in all, it was all just great experience.
Right. That's the unfortunate thing for, not just for 3D design, but it happens a lot in filmmaking in general, is that a lot of the work out there is unpaid. And there's always the promise of, hey, we're giving you experience. It'll be something to put on your portfolio, for whatever that's worth. And there's always that promise of, hey, this time it's for free, but if we like your work, maybe the next time will be paid. And, unfortunately, they're probably just going to go and find someone else who will work for free the next time.
Exactly. Yep.
Dirty little secret of the industry. I've always been kind of fascinated with, you compare that, photography and filmmaking, video production, that kind of stuff, the way that people just kind of, they're expected to work for free and for experience and everything. And I've always been kind of interested in the contrast between that and audio guys. You never ask an audio guy if they'll do your thing for free, because they don't.
Yeah.
Audio guys get paid, you know? An audio guy is not going to come and DJ your wedding or
that's true.
Do your band's concert or something for free. They get paid. Somehow they, as a group, as an industry, have decided we're not doing this freelance crap. We're not going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
Yeah. So it would be, I'd like to find out how they did it and try to figure out how to apply that to the video production world, so you don't get these, people saying, I need somebody to, I need someone to videotape my wedding. I need you to come and videotape the rehearsal dinner, videotape the wedding and the reception, edit it all together into a 1 hour video. Also, it's 2 states away. And the whole thing, I'll pay you $250.
Yeah, that won't fly.
It gets ridiculous. So, but anyways, back to what you're doing. It's great that you were actually able to get paying work out the door and actually, see that it can be a career. Yeah. Tell me about some of that client work. Like, what were some of the different things? I've noticed some of your stuff is animated and some of it is just, like more design wise, more just 3D graphics. Which I don't know. I'm not sure what the question is in there. Just, tell me a little bit about what some of the different things you did were and what some of the challenges were.
So for me, I think pretty much almost any client I've worked with, it's just been through somebody I've known. So like with Charles, there was a lot of architecture stuff. But then as his company kind of molded into something else, I started doing more set, like concept, 3D environment concepts. Because he kind of has a story idea that he wants to he came up with, and he's trying to take off the ground. And so I would do concept work for him, but rather than just doing 2D work, because I'm not a 2D artist, I would just make 3D mock-ups of these environments that he had in mind. So I've done that for a little while. I've done some motion graphic work, like animated logos, at a film festival, Carborough Film Festival. I think this was 2012, maybe. I ran into a guy who wanted an animated logo for his company, and so that was a really good experience there.
Yeah, I actually got to cover the Carborough Film Festival last year. I got to meet Nick Beery and all those guys. So that's interesting that you did some work for him. Yeah,
he's a really cool guy. He loves clowns.
Yes, he does. So, is there much of a learning with computer animation and 3D design? Were all those things pretty much in your wheelhouse? You had never done motion graphics before, but somebody asked you to do it, and you're like, yeah, I pretty much know how to do that before. Or is there, like, when somebody asks you to do something a little different, is there a lot you have to go out and research to figure it out?
So with 3D, it's kind of like film, whereas there are many different disciplines. But I mean, they're all kind of needed for the whole. For me particularly, because I like making films, like short films with my work, I got a lot of practice just kind of doing everything. But usually people have an interest in, say, just animation. So like they'll just focus 100% on just the movement of the characters and the acting, and just polishing that one thing. Or somebody may be interested in just like modeling, which is kind of like just creating the world, creating all the props, just making everything physically, well, virtually. With me, I'm kind of interested in everything. So because of that, I just call myself 3D artist. Kind of covers everything. So even if it's an animated logo, I kind of know I know all those systems and how they work. So I can make that anyway. But even if it's just, hey, a short film, I can still do that too. Okay.
So 2 questions. I guess the first one would be, back when you started out in school, I guess it would be the mid 2000s, 2004, 2005-ish, somewhere around that?
I think 2004 when I started.
Okay. What software were you learning on back then?
From the start, I've been learning Maya, Autodesk Maya. It's kind of the standard in the film and game industry. It's pretty popular, but it's also super complicated. And for me, it was very confusing. And it never really clicked for me until my junior year, when I had that one professor that just kind of made it all work.
The importance of a great professor.
Yeah, exactly. And Maya is pretty much kind of like, it's just this giant virtual toolbox where you can pretty much you can make, color all your props, you can animate everything and render it all out. You can even import sound.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's pretty much the software you see. If you ever look at like behind the scenes of a DVD, like say Lord of the Rings, for example, any computer you see is probably, if it's showing a 3D character, it's probably Maya.
Okay.
So
now, what's the free one? I can never remember. Is that Cinema 4D or Blender? I think it's Blender is the free one.
Yeah, Blender's free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you learned either of those, or have you just stuck with Maya?
I've just stuck with Maya. I actually haven't gotten around to using Blender yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I've just kind of stuck with Maya.
You already have a copy of Maya, usually the reason people go with the free version is because they can't afford the big professional production one.
But I mean, for Blender's defense, the stuff people come up with using Blender is pretty doggone good.
Yeah, I've seen some amazing stuff done with it, and a lot of that is, it comes down to talent. I've seen people, you talk about DSLR cameras. I've seen people who have, the Red Epic, who, that massive camera, who take really shitty video with it. And at the same time, I've seen people use a Canon T3i and get beautiful video out of it just because they're talented and they know what they're doing. And then, of course, there is, having decent capabilities in the tools. So I imagine that that Blender is for somebody with the know-how and the creativity, it has the tool set for what they need.
Oh yeah,
that sounded like a damn commercial. Blender, pay me.
Logo, insert logo.
Right there, sponsored by. So you were talking a little bit about short films and narrative stuff, and if anybody wants to see any of your work, they can go to your website, DwayneMartin.com.
Yep.
And go check out the portfolio and the short films. They're all here. They're all available to the public, and they're really cool. I watched them all. Specifically, the one that got me talking to you was because you showed this one, The Priest, at a short film screening for students at NC State. But I got to say, some of these others were really captivating too. Maiden Flight and Infinite in particular, I thought were really interesting. And I could ask you questions about these all day, which is why we'll probably save that for another time. But just real quickly, you expressed an interest in narrative and shorts. When did you start producing your own shorts, and how did you get into that?
So the way I see it, technically speaking, I made my first short in college. This was my sophomore year. Okay. But the way I see it, I started storytelling like a long time ago. And for me, it was just every single summer, like some kids kind of had friends to hang out with and, parties to go to. And well, for me and my sister, we kind of had just each other and our toys. So it was literally a constant story that we was constantly making up on the fly with all of our toys. That just spanned our entire childhood. All of our toys had different personalities. They had names. It wasn't just a one-time thing we played with them and then put them down. It was a constant revisiting of that and continuation of where we left off. So I think for me, that's kind of like where my origins of figuring out a story kind of came from, because that's pretty much what we were doing.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is there like mixing and matching stuff? Like you got her, like, geez, I don't know what girls were playing with back then. We'll say Barbies, My Little Ponies, that kind of stuff. And they got an ongoing story with the Ninja Turtles and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Just mixing and matching whatever toys you have. They all live in a Lego house. And
Yep. We had different sections of cities that were different sections of the room, or different sections of the cities, different families, different personalities. It
And
was
this was an ongoing story, like over the months
yep.
and the years, you just kept the narrative going. Did you ever have to write this down?
No, we never wrote it down. It was all improv.
You just have an incredible memory for all the story.
Yeah, and even if we go back today, like a lot of these toys are just kind of like in a toy box, you know, at my parents' house. But
Right.
we can still pick them up right today and just kind of continue, because there was all these memes that we came up with. It was just giant collection of personalities and stories that just can just make themselves. And so
Wow.
that's pretty much, I think, where this all started. So thanks, my sister.
Absolutely. It takes, you know, it's hard to do stuff on your own.
Mhm.
So when you started doing narrative short films, did you ever do, you know, maybe for the school project ones, did you have to do that all by yourself, or did you actually get a group together?
So I've done a little bit of both, but most of my work is, unfortunately, have been on my own because it's been student stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All of my films have been student work, but it wasn't like, for example, Made in Flight. That started off as the prompt was just to make an animation about somebody walking, and so I just spun it into something that I can make into a film. Because I mean, with me, I'm always thinking, like, my mind always goes back to those stories I made up as a kid, and so like I'm constantly just trying to create something bigger than what's given to me.
And something a little off the beaten path, because
yeah,
you know, somebody says make a video about somebody walking. You know, it's really easy to just do a walk cycle. But what you came up with, and again, I'm not going to spoil it for everybody. You should absolutely go to DwayneMartin.com to the short films under the portfolio and watch Made in Flight. But you picked you found a really unique angle to that question and came up with a really cool story.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I remember when I first pitched that idea to the class, they were just like, I don't see how you're going to do it. There's only a semester, and how are you going to do this? But anything's possible. You know, you just got to just plan it out and cut a lot of corners.
So that took you a whole semester to do?
Yeah, that was a semester. And one of the things that I said while pitching it to my class, specifically my professor, was, I'm trying to see how much I can do in a short amount of time, since my thesis was coming up the next year. Because I kind of was using that as a test to see what I can do for my thesis.
Okay. Now, at the time, did you have your thesis is a tripticity project?
Yeah.
At the time, did you have the idea for that whole project?
No.
Okay.
At the time, I didn't know what to think for my project. I just knew that a project needed to happen, and they also needed to do this giant paper. And the word paper just terrified me. So I had no idea what to do. So yeah.
Yeah, writing stuff was never my strong point. I was much better at doing stuff.
Me too.
And you know, I found in the few projects that I've done, it's actually been probably my biggest struggle is I know, you know, I come up with the idea and I know what I want, but I'm not necessarily good at writing it down and conveying it. So there have been a few projects that I did where, you know, I did a really bad job of communicating to the actors and the crew and everything what I wanted. And like, no, it's in my head. I got it. Just do this and it'll look cool. And that's something that I've really had to work on over time, is actually explaining to people what I want ahead of time, you know, so that everybody's on the same page. So have you done, what kind of group projects have you done?
So Triptixity is probably the first finished animation that I've had help with. With that, I had some of my friends, some of my peers at the time, help me out with that.
Professional or classmates?
Well, classmates, but they're professionals. Jamie Andrews, she's a really great concept artist, as well as just animator in general. She's done some concept character stuff for me. So like making the 2D drawings that I can use to create my 3D models with.
She did the storyboard?
She didn't do the storyboards, but she did do like character concept stuff. And then I also have another friend, Elizabeth Hume. She's a matte painter. She done some environment concept stuff for me, which was both of their work is really cool.
So how would you compare working solo and working with a group? Which do you prefer?
I prefer a group. um, I prefer a group.
Delegate all that work.
Yes, there's no comparison. I've had a few more group projects while I was at State. I've done a couple of film projects with the film class that I took there, and those films are on my website too. But I also done a couple other 3D animation group projects, but they unfortunately didn't finish. The only downside with 3D animation is there's no footage. So if you don't finish everything, you have to you don't have anything.
Right. You built the models, you built the environments, and you did a lot of the animation, but you never rendered it out, so there's nothing.
Yeah, or there's just not enough time to complete animating or whatever. So, but those experiences were really great, learning stuff. One was a class project where we came up with a new rendition of the Big Bad Pig story. The Three Little Pigs.
Big Bad Wolf? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, which we changed.
Big Bad Pig, there's a new idea. Run with that.
And that was really cool. For that, I done some 3D environment stuff. I pretty much made the brick house, which you can see in my portfolio. I made the Three Little Pigs brick house, and I made the stick house and the straw house. But unfortunately, we didn't finish the project, so it's kind of in limbo. And then another project I was a part of, it was a much smaller group. For one semester, we came up with our own original story. And it took us about a month to come up with a story. But then they elected me director, which was exciting, but also, okay, how are we going to get this done type thing. And that was the first time that I was kind of in charge of other people's work, which was really eye-opening. But at the same time, some of the people on the team was still new to 3D animation, so it was a mixed bag. With academia, I think there's kind of a hit or miss. If you have the right people, it can happen. Otherwise, it's just, it's kind of more of a learning experience, which pretty much it turned out to be.
Right. In the corporate environment, you can go out and hire the best people you can find who are all really good at what they're doing. Whereas in an academic environment, it's, whoever's in the program, hopefully they're all very talented, or at least very interested and hardworking. But, again, like I said, you kind of got to work with what you got.
Yeah.
But I'm sure everybody gave it a good try.
Oh, yeah. Everyone gave it a good try. They gave it a really good, awesome stuff. It's just for the idea we had, we just couldn't put it off. That's pretty much all it came down to.
Now, you say if you don't render it out, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
But when you're working on a project, especially if it has multiple scenes, or even if it's just a very, very short, do you ever render out like a working version? Like maybe one that's just wireframes, or one that's all the models but not textures?
Well, yeah. So we call that play blast. Well, that's a Maya term.
Okay.
It's pretty much what it's called. It's just what it looks like in the viewport in the software. So we can do that. Like we can just shoot that out, which takes like 5 seconds. But it's not show worthy.
Right. You wouldn't show anybody that.
Yeah. That's just really for like critique and timing and, just to comment and have discussion over.
Okay. So like in the case of this project where you say it didn't happen, so there was nothing, you probably do have some of those, but that's not something you're going to, show at the end of class.
Yeah, we had some, but it wasn't, all the scenes weren't there, and some scenes didn't exist. And so it was just a thing of what we did have, it wasn't enough to convey the story at all. And it just, the bare essentials didn't exist. So we couldn't.
Right. Now, how does that work with the final grade? Because that's kind of an all or nothing thing. Is it if that final video doesn't happen, everybody gets an F, or is there some way they can grade you on the work you've done up to that point?
Yeah, I think the way they handled it, they graded us on what we've done.
Okay.
Because I think it is pretty much a hit or miss thing. I think that's one of the things that when the film class that I did take, I was just like, I loved it. It was like, okay, I can shoot and I still have something, and I can kind of edit what I have and, do some tricks here and there to make it work. But 3D at the same time, you kind of have more control over how everything looks. So, I mean, it's pretty much, whatever your story calls for.
Mm. Yeah, I've seen some of those behind the scenes stuff at Pixar, you know, of them working on stuff. And I remember one in particular of Finding Nemo. They were just going over this one scene over and over again where the dad is talking to his son, and it's like, go back and like close his eyes a little bit more, you know,
Yeah.
so he looks a little bit sadder, and
Yeah.
then have him like he's waving his fin a little bit, but you know, just make it a little bit higher and everything. It's like you can just go back and tweak all that little stuff and get exactly what you want.
Yep.
But at the same time, that's a whole nother render you got to go back and do.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on your pipeline, right? So like, I think the normal workflow is you kind of stay in this animating the files and then just shooting off these play blasts for critique. And then once something's like finalized, then you can just kind of shoot it off to get rendered, but then working on something else. Ideally, you kind of want to have the entire project in this play blast form. That way you can see the entire thing. Try to get to the finish line as fast as possible. And then you kind of go back and just fix all of the different stuff for every single shot. And then you just shoot it off to the render. That's and that's what, that's basically what you want. But it's not always how it happens.
You know, sometimes things just don't work out that way.
Yeah.
Now, do you find having that level of control paralyzing sometimes? Because like when you're shooting video, you know, you actually get your actors together and everything. And if something isn't quite right, you know, if you see this one little thing, it's like, well, we don't have the actors anymore. We don't have the money to go out and shoot again. We can't get that location. So we got to make this work. Whereas, you know, like we said with computer animation, you know, you can tweak stuff. Do you ever kind of get paralyzed by that? Just tweak and tweak and tweak, and you can never, you know, when do you say, all right, that's close enough?
I think that deadline, you know.
Right. You've had to do school projects. So it's ready when the end of the semester rolls around.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like it all revolves around that deadline. So like one positive to doing everything or doing most of it on my own is I can cut corners. I know where to cut corners because I'm not handing it off to anybody. So like in a set, I can just make what is visible, and then everything else I just don't even have. Or for a certain shot, if his legs aren't visible, if a character's legs aren't visible in the shot, I don't even worry about moving them. So there's all these types of weird tricks you can do to just make it look good in camera, in virtual camera. But then
kind of like my little wall here. If I tilted the camera one way or the other, or you're like we were talking before the show, I said, my desk is a mess right now. I don't have a square inch of clean deck space, but as long as it's not on camera, it doesn't matter. Just got to make what's in the frame look good.
Exactly. That's all that matters.
So, let me see where we were. So you, you know, after doing some climb work, you went to NC State. You graduated this past winter, I guess?
Yeah, December last year.
Okay, congratulations.
Thanks.
And now you're out in the world, I guess, out in the corporate world. How has you said you're still using Maya? So the software you're using hasn't changed. Well, I'm sorry, which program you're using hasn't changed over the years, but how has the software and how has the field of 3D design, 3D animation changed in the past decade or so?
So yeah, like Maya used to just be like my only go-to thing. Now it's kind of like my foundation. Like with a lot of stuff I do, like I may start in Maya, but I don't finish in Maya.
Right.
One thing in particular that I know of, ZBrush is a program that's pretty big now as well in the 3D world. And ZBrush is pretty much like playing with clay in the computer. So you can push and pull stuff and it works just the way you would think physically, like in real life. It's not so much about wireframes and logic and stuff like that. Even though those things still exist, it's more so just about, it's much more organic.
Okay.
Whereas Maya can be much more procedural and like more logical with your approach.
Right. Okay. I think I understand. It's kind of like with photo editing. It's kind of the difference between Illustrator or Photoshop. I don't know if you're familiar with the difference between those two. It's bitmap versus vector.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Illustrator all the way. Right. But ZBrush, when I was first kind of introduced to 3D, that ZBrush was just kind of getting started. and I never really knew anything about it. But now it's just blown up so much, and it's very user friendly. There's still a learning curve to it, but it's one of those things where you can pretty much just kind of hop in and just kind of go to town. So now, like, I may just start something in Maya just to kind of make a base, like a something that looks okay, but then I bring it in ZBrush and dress it up and make it look a lot better.
Okay. Now, you've been doing this for a while, and I guess at this point you've still had the benefit of, because technology changes and everything, like we were just talking about. And it can be hard to keep up with it. You've had the benefit of being through in school a couple times, so actually being able to learn new software in an academic environment. But I assume probably in the professional world too, you've had to, keep up with changing technologies and industry standards and everything. What's that like for you as a professional, having to keep up with changing technology in your field?
For the most part, prior to my current position, right now I'm at Epic Games, doing some animation assistant work, which is really cool. And so far, that's like the biggest thing I've been associated with. Everything prior to this, it's been all freelance. So it's pretty much just been using my own computers. Mm-hmm. So just using what I have, which I'm already familiar with. But going to Epic, they kind of provide you with the stuff that they want you to use. And so I think knowing one piece of software really, really well makes it a lot easier to learn anything else. Because, I mean, for the most part, it's all the same stuff. It's just called different names, or it's located in a different place. But, I mean, the foundation is all the same.
Okay. Yeah, kind of like people who are used to using Premiere.
Yeah.
For Adobe Premiere for video editing, if they go somewhere that uses Final Cut Pro, it's different, but the fundamentals are mostly the same. And if you know one really well, you can figure out the other one.
Exactly. So, I mean, Maya is a really great starting point. And now Autodesk has this program where you can just kind of sign up for free, and you can download free copies of their software as a student. So, I mean, it's free. So, use it, learn it. It's great stuff. And on one side note, not to promote myself at all, but like,
by all means, promote yourself. I've named your website twice already. Go for it.
If you are interested in learning Maya, I have made, like, a couple of years ago, I made like some really short introductory videos to Maya, and I posted them on YouTube. I had done them as a teacher assistant while I was at State, but people seem to love them, so I'm more than welcome. I can share the link with you after this.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can put it in the description. So,
like, what's the name of the YouTube channel?
Gosh, it's so old. I think it's like Damara 919.
Okay.
But I have to find it. It's one of those things where I just made something just to put it up there, and
Okay. If you try that, folks, and it doesn't work, go look in the show notes, and I'll have the links to the actual videos down there.
Yeah. But
okay.
A lot of people find them really helpful. So
cool. Well, that's a good way to help contribute to the community, because so much stuff. I mean, it's so easy to make a YouTube video these days.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of people learn stuff. I mean, I've learned so much about video editing, about this broadcasting stuff, how to build a wall. I learned all that from watching YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So, if you have to figure something out that maybe it's been done before, but nobody's made a tutorial of it before, to go out there and make something and put it out there to help other people who run into that problem in the future. That's a great thing to do. That's a great way to help out the community. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, no, there's no problem with me at all.
Even though it's no good to me, I know what it's like to need to be able to find information that's not out there. So, I appreciate you going out there and providing that information for folks.
Yeah. Yeah, I learn a lot of stuff from YouTube too.
So, I only got a couple more questions. You mentioned that you're working at Epic Games now as an assistant animator. When people think of computer animation, 3D animation, they usually think 3D animated movies, maybe a couple TV shows like the Clone Wars or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or they probably think movies. I'm sure when you tell people you're a 3D artist, more than one person has said, "Oh, so you want to get a job out at Pixar, right?" So, but as you've mentioned before, with the 3D graphics and building environments and that kind of thing, there's a lot more that you can do with an education in 3D animation. So, what are some of the things that you've done, some different avenues that you've done? And, just for people who are considering going into this field, what are some other areas that this, that this can go into that they might not have thought of?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Like a lot of new 3D artists or just people who are interested definitely just instantly think Pixar, but 3D
not that there's anything wrong with that, though.
Yeah, Pixar is great. Pixar's absolutely
We're not
amazing.
here to shit on Pixar. We like them. It's just that there is more out there.
Yeah, but there's so much out there. So much, I think, that a lot of people don't actually realize. A lot of the stuff you see, like almost everywhere, it's fake. It's 3D. Like, so for me in particular, I've done some product design stuff, some motion graphic stuff, and just general animation. But a lot of magazine ads, especially cars, those are all 3D cars. Commercials, a lot of times those are 3D cars too. One way to kind of ask yourself, okay, how is this 3D or not, is just look at the reflections. If you're somebody who understands light a lot, and you understand lighting really well, it may be a lot easier to pick out a car that is actually CG versus real.
Right.
Of course, it's movies, and then in my case, it's video games. Video games require a lot of animation, both for mobile, for console, desktop computers. It's a pretty wide open world out there.
And there's several people doing it. It's not like, a place like Epic Games, they're not going to have the 3D animation guy. There's going to be going to be a guy who does character animations. There's going to be someone who does the animations on background stuff. If there are trees blowing and stuff, there's going to be people working on just the cinematics in between. So, even within video games, there are a lot of different specialties people can be going into.
Yeah, that's exactly true. I mean, just find whatever you like the most and just kind of like just dig as deep as you can with that. With 3D, because it is so wide, kind of getting back to my point, like me in particular, in my experience, I've kind of been like a 3D generalist for the most part. In more recent years, I'm more so trying to focus my skill set and just really kind of focusing and harnessing in on like modeling and texturing. Because in the field, people can know a lot, but they really want people who are really, really good at one or two things. And
right.
So,
like we were saying, Epic Games isn't going to hire the 3D guy. They're going to say, we need a guy who is an expert. We don't want somebody who knows a little bit about textures. We need a texture expert.
Exactly.
So that kind of goes into my last question. I was going to ask you for advice on people who want for people who want to get into the field. And like you were just saying, I was going to ask you if it's better to be a generalist or to specialize in something. Sounds like you were going to say specializing is the way to go. Yeah,
I think in the long road, you want to be a specialist. However, I think starting off, it's good to take some time to try to be a generalist. Because I know for me, that is what helped teach me what I'm best at and what I'm not so good at. So like, there's a lot of stuff in the process and the whole general pipeline that I'm just not that good.
But you wouldn't know that if you hadn't tried it.
Exactly. And so in my experience, just making short film after short film after short film, I can animate, I'm fine animating, but the process of setting up a character to be animated is called rigging. Like I'm terrible with that. And because of that, my animations become limited. So it's just one of those things, to kind of measure yourself.
Right.
There's a lot of free software out there. I highly recommend checking out the student.autodesk.com website. Download
students.autodesk.com.
Yeah, students with an S. Yep.
Students.autodesk.com. Okay.
Yeah. download free software, and there's tons of tutorials out there. I made some, and I'm not the only one. Just the internet now, man, you can find pretty much anything you need, and it's just out there waiting for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And not to, not to take a crack at schools or anything, because I'm sure they provide a great amount of value, and you learned a lot of stuff there. Obviously, got to work with other people.
Mhm.
But I'm always curious in asking people in technical fields like this, given that there is so much you can learn online now and in tutorials on YouTube, and, maybe you even pay for a subscription to lynda.com or, some of these classes online and everything. Would you recommend to someone that they actually go to school and get a degree in this stuff, or can they learn most of the stuff, on their own if they're motivated enough to do that?
I think it's actually still a great idea to go to school. And the reason I say this is because ultimately what you're paying for is the connections. Like, a lot of the people that you go into class with will also be in the field too. And on top of that, like, your professors, the knowledge they have, and then there's a lot of resources given to students just in general. Fortunately, in this field, like whether you want to be in video games or in movies, with 3D stuff, if you know how to do it really well, you don't technically have to go to school because they'll hire you just from what you can do. But at least go into school if you're going to go to school, knowing what school is going to be able to give you versus the opposite. And I think for me, that is the connections that you get, the resources that schools have. I know, like at the College of Design, they have a design library, which I miss so bad. It's just a library dedicated to just filled with books for designers, architects, 3D artists. It's what I want in a library. They just took my slice and just put it right there. And so
very convenient.
Yeah. So stuff like that, and it's the money goes a long way.
Right.
But again, it just comes down to how much you know and how comfortable you are. But on top of that, you also get the opportunity to get your work critiqued, which is not impossible online. But again, it's just there's something with being able to pitch your work in front of other people and then getting direct feedback.
And other people who have your best interest at heart and are going to give constructive criticism, because let's be honest, there's a lot of noise in the YouTube comments, and some of it is not nice, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the film. So
yeah, unfortunately, that exists.
Yeah, it is the internet. It's kind of the Wild West, and you got to put up with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So. Well, cool. This has been a really great chat, and I appreciate you taking the time to share stuff with me. Folks, like I've mentioned a couple times, Dwayne has a website, DwayneMartin.com. You can go there and check out some of his work. I'm a big fan of his short films. I told Dwayne when we first started out, I said, I like your films. I want to talk to you about all this other stuff and your education and how you got where you are. But I got so much to ask you about the short films. I don't want to cut it short. So if it's cool with you, I would actually like to have you back on sometime just to kind of talk about your films, and not just the technical end, because story-wise, I think they're really cool too. So I just really like to dive in that if you're up for it sometime.
Yeah, I'm definitely up for it, man.
Awesome. So stay tuned for part 2 with Dwayne Martin sometime down the road. Dwayne, thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with me. Where can people do you have anything to promote, and where can people find you online?
Only thing I really have to promote at the moment is just my website, DwayneMartin.com. On that, I do have links to any social networking that I'm a part of, so Facebook, Instagram, all of that stuff. Once in a while on Instagram, I'll post up like some work in progress stuff of whatever I'm working on.
Okay.
So there will be some stuff being posted probably within the next month or so. Currently, even though I work at Epic right now, I'm on the side, I'm trying to stew up my portfolio.
You can't tell us what game you're working on at Epic, can you? So we'll know what game to wait for that has your fingerprints all over it.
Actually, I can mention Paragon. They just recently announced that.
Okay.
So the trailer is on YouTube, and I can also link you that link as well.
Yeah, definitely. Let's include that. Do you know if any of your work is visible in the trailer?
So with my role, I'm an animation assistant, so I do a lot of the stuff to start things off.
Okay.
So nothing in the trailer is going to be a final representation, but it's still
it wouldn't
a lot
have
of work.
happened if you hadn't been there.
Exactly. There's still a lot of there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of gears to make this thing working.
Okay. Cool. Well, that's really awesome. I'm glad I got the chance to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again and seeing some of your future work.
Thank you so much, Bob, for having me. This has been great.
No problem. And you guys, I hope you enjoyed this chat too. If you want to see more from Local Film Talk, you can, of course, follow Local Film Talk on Twitter @LocalFilmTalk. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, our email address is localfilmtalk@gmail.com. Check out the YouTube channel. Subscribe there, and you'll get notifications as soon as new episodes come out. And of course, if you don't have the time to sit through a 45-minute conversation, you can always subscribe to the podcast. Go on iTunes and subscribe to the Local Film Talk podcast. We're there too. And it's, I always listen to this when I'm running or doing some mindless task. I mean, I got to do quality control and everything, but it's pretty cool to listen to that way. I'm a big fan of podcasts. So check that out. Don't miss this episode with Dwayne Martin, and hopefully another one in the future. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Dwayne Martin, for joining us, and we will see you next week.